Go. Welcome. Gio and I have an especially esteemed guest today. We have Frank Cottle with us, and I was asking Frank how to introduce him. He has an incredible background in the flex industry. Some of you may know him from Alliance Virtual Offices. He is the chairman and founder, and that was founded in 2007. And he is also the executive publisher of allwork.space, which has an incredible global following. We were just chatting about that. If you're not an All Work follower, sign up for the newsletter. Make sure you're listening to the podcast. They produce prolifically around the future of work. He speaks, he mentors, he does a lot of things. So, Frank, thanks for making the time to join us today.
Gosh, it's my pleasure, and anything I can ever do to help, I'm always appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Well, you were just saying kind of your mission behind All Work is to promote the industry, and that you do.
Well,
Well,
that
let's
that
be clear. One of his titles, he's actually one of the godfathers of the industry, right? I mean,
Yeah, 100%.
you
well,
started off with Mark Dixon,
uh,
and y'all just went different paths.
well,
You know what? Right. We sort of left that off because Frank, I have heard your full story because you own physical locations back in the day.
yeah, we actually started in the 79, 80 building purpose-built buildings. It was a land banking theory. We would buy the biggest piece of dirt we could, put the smallest building we could to hold the property. And what we found at that time in our research is these funny little things called executive suites generated the most potential revenue per square foot of any commercial real estate. So we thought, aha, that's what we should do. We should build these funny executive suite things. So we started, and we were very technology focused. In fact, we're using video today. We actually put in full complete video systems in our centers that we built in the buildings in 1981, 82. We built buildings across California, Arizona, and Texas, and sold that portfolio in 1990. And we transitioned to management contracts. We were one of the first companies, I think we were. Well, we and IWG Regis were probably the first two companies to do management contracts. We did that and then conventional leases, just like everybody else does, between 90 and 2000. And we sold that portfolio in 2000. I made the decision I wanted to own the customer, but not the centers.
There you go.
I know we also, I'd had a couple other technology companies that we'd been successful with. So I decided we wanted to have more of a tech focus, a technology focus. We thought we could scale faster. And the benefit of that is we could also drive more business across the entire industry rather than be an operator functionally cannibalizing the marketplace to our advantage and against others. So wasn't altruistic, it was a business plan, but that's the way we decided to go. Today we're servicing over 180,000 customers worldwide in 54 countries.
Yeah, I can't remember where we were at a meeting and you were talking about operators using the Alliance service in Dubai.
Well, yeah, we
Yeah.
ac- we actually have a variety of branded licensed centers operating throughout the Gulf states and gosh, even in Russia right now. So that's another part of our business that has grown and continues to grow. We just opened two new centers in Oman, as an example,
Wow.
in Muscat. And
Wow.
so, you
And
know,
do you still travel? Do you?
no, I meet the partners that on those things in London.
Okay.
I don't want to say I don't enjoy spending time in the Middle East. It's a little too far, but I do enjoy spending time from London, and so do they. So we meet. In fact, we were just passing messages back and forth because we just had a meeting set up in early December when I was over in the UK.
Gio
So,
had his first trip to Dubai. He spoke at the Cornet event there. Did you guys talk about that?
No, we didn't
no, we
actually.
really didn't. Well, let me tell you my definition of Dubai. Dubai is a cross section between if you took New York and you mixed it with Las Vegas and you had Disneyland run it, that's Dubai.
That's what you got.
It's the only country I've ever seen where they actually have a minister of happiness.
They do.
They
I did
do.
not know this.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. It's also the only country where they have Ferraris as police cars. So it's a little, like I say, Disneyland is running it.
Wait, who is telling me the consequences for theft are so severe that you can go out and leave your purse like, in a hotel bar? Are there hotel bars?
Yes, there are. Yes,
Yeah.
there are.
Yes.
And come
Yes.
back hours later and it will be sitting there.
Most likely that's true because if I were to steal it and I were to be caught, I would have my right hand removed.
Right. So you are,
Not
yeah.
surgically, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like a giant state-owned machete and or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And speaking of, you moved to Dallas. So you are in Dallas where was minus 10
I'm in
degrees
Fort
this
Worth.
morning.
Yeah, I'm in Fort Worth.
Okay.
72 years in California on the beach, and I decided, what the heck, I'd go Texas. So I'm going to spend the rest of my career here.
Well, kind of stepping back, getting back on track. So we mentioned kind of your background owning or doing the buildings, owning centers. We briefly touched about on Alliance, right? So you want to share what Alliance is and kind of what your goal was with that?
Well, Alliance Virtual, like I said, the business plan wise, I made the decision that I wanted to own the customer and not the centers, and to run a technology-based company rather than a plant or a physically based company. And Alliance Virtual was really the first aggregator in the industry. We built the business model. Others have followed and followed very successfully. People like Da Vinci, like Cloud, they all started inside of Alliance. So, it's been very successful in generating business for others as well as for ourselves. We were the first with the business model, and today we provide virtual officing services to our customers through our partner locations. And we don't necessarily focus on having the most partner locations.
I was going to say you have sort of an invite only approach to
Yeah, we do.
your partner network.
It's funny. Something I learned when we were operating, we still operate the Alliance Business Centers network, which is very much focused on sharing information, best practices, and also some marketing. But what I learned there is that you can really have a variety. In fact, I'll tell you the story how I learned it. I was in India. I was in Chennai and in a very high-end building in a very nice conference room or a conference area that was in an open plaza on the bottom floor of the building. So it's open air. It's
Hmm.
open air. It was beautiful. And we're doing a press conference there. And we have some partners over in India. And so we're doing a press conference. And across this open air lobby wanders a cow.
I was waiting to hear what you would, the cow was not what was popping into my mind. Okay.
Wanders a cow, and
Yep.
cows being cows, it kind of
They're
did it.
sacred in some
And
Indian.
there's fun. It's funny there too. The fellow I was with, we were in a meeting one time, and we were in London, and the opposing party we were talking to, he said, "Well, we got to get everything on the table. No sacred cows here." And my partner looked at him very seriously, a very clever guy. He looked at him very seriously. Says, "I'm sorry, but to me, all cows are sacred."
Right.
It kind of took the meeting in a different direction. Anyway, this cow walks through the meeting and he kind of does his business in the middle of the lobby, and everybody just ignores it. And I thought to myself right then, as we're building the network and as we're building the Alliance Virtual, I said, we can have a variety of facilities that match the markets they're in, but we can only have one standard of service, and that has to be 4+5 star. And so we really focus on facilities that match their marketplace.
Hmm.
People are comfortable and it gives us more variety that way, but we can only have one standard of service. And that's what we've really built it around. And so it is not exclusive, but we are more discerning than some business models might be. And there's nothing wrong with those models at all. They're just different. So that's what we focused on.
So I'm curious,
And then from Alliance, oh, go ahead.
no, I think you're on a delay. So I started and then you jumped in. See, this is where we'll edit. Go ahead, Gio. I'll save mine.
So from a alliance, you basically now started all work. And so what is all work? What was the goal behind it? Kind of what's the business?
We started all work in late, we took our internal Alliance Business Centers network, our internal ABCN newsletter, which was called Officing Today. And that was just for us. And I decided the problem with it and also the network in some regards, it was too exclusive and I wanted to be more inclusive.
Okay.
Wanted to reach broader across the industry. And we define the industry a little different than some, which I can hit in a second. But so we wanted to broaden it. And my view was that we could build a platform that would help, as they say, the rising tide floats all ships. And that's really what we tried to do. The biggest challenge that our industry has faced since I started in it and since those before me were in it was explaining to people what we do
Mm.
and how it benefits them and really all the definitions that come along with it.
That is still the case today, Frank,
Well,
right? I mean, it is. I
it-
just did a website audit and I said, don't hesitate. You have to use the real estate to explain because it's still, 3% of commercial real estate. Like it's
well,
still
and
largely,
we're really a real estate dependent industry, like the
yeah.
hospitality industry is. We're real estate dependent, or we're place dependent. And back in, I think it was 2002 or three, somebody said, "Oh, we need to define this and that." And I said, "Okay, let's define the industry." So we simply said and we're talking about the operators now, not the entire industry, but we provide people, place, and technology in a single bundled product that's delivered with a highly flexible service agreement. That's what we do. That's our elevator speech.
Mhm.
Very simple. And that's a two-floor elevator speech. It's a very
No,
simple.
that's pretty good. Yeah,
Hey,
two
hey,
floor,
Frank,
exactly, right. You're like, yeah, no,
Frank, what do you do? Well, my company provides people, place, and technology in a single bundled product, and we deliver it with a highly flexible service agreement. What do you do, Jamie? It's very simple. So we defined that, and you notice people, place, and technology has popped up all over the world in combination now, and that's good because that's what we do. But when I look at our industry, I say, well, there's operators, co-working operators, business center operators, serviced office operators. There's operators of facilities that provide that people, place, and technology, et cetera. But there's also service companies, everything co-working. Alliance Virtual, hundreds and hundreds of service companies now that are critical to the support of the operators so that they can support their clients. There's agents. Hey, Giovanni, that
Mhm.
help the operators to find space and help the clients to find operators. Instant Offices is a great example of that. Alliance Virtual, good example of that. And then there's the property companies. Without the property companies, what would we have? Nothing. And they're becoming operators overall. And then most importantly, there's the customer. The customer is part of our industry. And so when we look at the industry, we look at that holistic group. And then we redefine spaces, as we say, well, the serviced office space is people, place, and technology with professional image and services. That's its brand promise. And then a co-working center might be people, place, and technology with business growth through a collaborative community. That's its brand promise. And then you've got incubators, accelerators, media centers, et cetera, et cetera. Each have a separate brand promise. Just like if you buy a Ferrari, you get a different brand promise than if you buy a Volkswagen. But they're both automobiles. And so our industry is evolving incredibly, just incredibly right now. And that's very exciting to see because we won't be 3%, we'll be 20% at some point in time. And if we keep growing at our pace we're growing, we'll be there sooner than most people think.
Frank, I'm curious. So you've been doing this for a long time, and I suspect you are one of those, well, probably a rare individual in the industry who's been doing this for so long, but maybe would have predicted some of the cycles or the sort of framework for evolution of the industry. What's next? What's the next maybe 5 years?
Well, I'm kind of excited because We, in 16, 17, 18, we said by 23, we would start seeing virtual offices that were artificial reality.
Hmm.
And we would start seeing artificial reality come in as a part of what our industry does. And when I look at what Facebook's changes to, for better or worse, and all the stuff that we've been playing with, and I don't know about you, but I've strapped on my headset and worked for a couple days at a time inside of virtual offices and virtual worlds and things of that nature. In fact, sad news is I got lost in one once and knocked the coffee over on my desk. But all of this is evolving. So I think we're going to continue to see that. And if you look at Apple's latest release with their new virtual headset, which you could see through, which is kind of interesting, we're not that far from the Beam Me Up Scotty holographically in meeting rooms. And we will see that because that technology is there. It's just too expensive and too complicated. Guess what? It used to cost $150,000 to put together a video conferencing system, and you had to go through a separate company that had a codex that would connect you to the other company. The technology will evolve for us to do so many things. And so I'm very excited to watch that and to see how it can evolve the future of work and how it can continue to help us grow to be more and more productive. And that's the whole premise of artificial intelligence is not to steal people's jobs, but to make people more productive at their jobs. And I think that we'll see a lot of that applied in our own industry as we go forward.
So you saw and I think you and I briefly discussed it, the news about United Franchise Group slash
Oh, sure.
Vast Coworking taking over Intelligent Office. And so their kind of brand and product offering, kind of like IWG's done, right? Transfer from Regis to IWG. So
And
they have all the different
IWG
brands.
kind of did it like HQ did, and
Yeah,
late 80s, early 90s.
yeah, for sure.
Franchising has been around a long time, and honestly, if you look at number of units, and it's not the dots on the map that count, it's the size of the dots. Okay, because revenues are generated by square footage, which equals customer service capacity. So you really have to not just look at dots, but to look at the customer service capacity or the size of the dots. And that defines revenue, which just defines the strength of the company, and the strength of that model defines capital's willingness to come in and grow that aspect of the industry. Sorry if I took you off on a tangent, but that's
No, and I think that's where my question was headed is, you've got, let's call it three different color dots, right? With VentureX being one brand, you've got Office Evolution being a different brand, and then you got Intelligent Office. And I know that you and I got into it. You knew the Office Evolution brand very well and the family behind it and everything around
sure.
that. So, I mean, kind of, do you see that continue to be a thing where there's more of these Bonvoy, IHG type offerings that are companies that are gonna start, or private
Multi-branded
equity?
operators really is what you're talking about, or
Yeah.
multi-branded business systems within our industry, and absolutely yes. Because what I think you're seeing when you consider that is really just simply the attraction of capital. And I will say that before 1994, sorry to take you guys back that far, but before 1994, 95, maybe 96, there were no smart people in our industry. Okay. And the reason I say that it is really there was no capital in our industry. It was all mom and pop. It was all entrepreneurship, bootstrapped, et cetera, from the bottom up. HQ had some flirtings with that, but didn't really do anything. They actually came apart and went back together a few times because they didn't have capital structures they could make work. And the reason there was no capital is that there was no defined exit point. Why would you put money into anything that you can't get your money back out of except as a cash cow? Investors don't do that. People bootstrap and do that. Entrepreneurs do that, but the capital doesn't. So until there was some defined exit points. You didn't have capital. But once you got those exit points and people could start seeing how to organize things, consolidate things, capital started coming in and building companies up like IWG or Regis at the time, like HQ at the time. Overall, there were several other companies. Servcor is another smaller but very good example of the early people that were able to bring in capital and grow as a result. Well, the franchise is just another capital model. That's all it is. It's another capital model overall, and it will continue to succeed. HQ was the first big company that started franchising in the industry. Regis has been franchising on and off for 30 years. Their model is different. They don't find Sam and Sally to buy a location franchise. They say, oh, let's franchise all of Japan. They have a big master franchise, a master model. We have centers in the Middle East that are not franchised, but are licensed in multiple locations. So absolutely multi-brand companies, multi-function companies. We're a technology company, yet we're licensing operations in a different part of the world. All of that is good. It builds an industry. Not us necessarily, but the concept of multi-brand and multi-operational companies, multi-dimensional companies. What I like about what United has done is each of their brands serves a little bit different marketplace. So they're overlapping, but they're not directly competitive. That means from a senior management point of view, they can have a senior manager in a single marketplace helping each of the three brands grow independently. And that's very important to the growth of that model, is that it can get its management well structured.
Frank, what do you think the exit opportunities will be in the next few years?
Depends on what's exiting, doesn't it? Private companies have a tendency always to sell on a multiple of EBITDA unless they're very rapidly growing out of their own revenues, in which case they generally sell on a multiple of their gross margin. Very few private companies are able to sell on a multiple of their revenues unless they're very rapidly growing, the classic hockey stick, as they say in your part of the world, and unless they have institutional funding behind that growth. So basic operators are stuck, if you will, in an EBITDA model. And EBITDA models are funny. If you own your own buildings and you sell the building with it, and you have 10 buildings and 10 centers and 10 buildings, well, you have one valuation because you're going to take into consideration the property value. If you're only selling the center, the first question a buyer will ask is, how much time do you have on your lease? That's the first question. Because I have to pay a price as an investor. If I were to be that investor, I have to pay a price where I can get my money back and a profit, a return on that money inside of the remaining years of your lease, because I don't know what the renewal is going to be. So there's a scale. If you're going to sell your company, one of the first things you should do is reposition all your leases before you put the company in. Okay. Oh gosh, I've got 9.5 years and they're really good. They're really good market rates. Oh, I know. I'll pay you a multiple of 6, maybe 5. Oh, I've only got 4 years left. I'll pay you a multiple of 2. It's not real complicated. It is. One of the challenges, though, is people calculating their own EBITDA. Oh, I'm making lots of profit. Well, yeah, but you don't pay yourself anything. You're taking the profit and you call that, but you are doing 3 different jobs. You're the business development, you're the salesperson, and you're the center manager.
Yeah.
You have to replace all those jobs and back that out. So it's like, Jamie, I'll give you a multiple of 5. Now we'll argue about what your EBITDA really is.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 things really that define exit overall. And the most valuable exit for a private company today is a private company that has a co-dominant position I'll say with IWG, that's the big dog, a co-dominant position in a single marketplace where anybody that buys them ends up co-dominant with IWG, or IWG looks at them and says, wait, I got 20 centers in that town. You got 20 centers in that town. If I buy your 20 centers, I own that town. And that's long been a strategy of Regis and IWG. And there, if you look at their acquisitions all over the world, that is one of their strategies, and it's very successful. Then they own that town, and it's very difficult to compete with them directly. You have to compete with them indirectly by creating a different product. That's where co-working versus a classic business center comes in, or in the old days, but now they would say, no, we got spaces. We have centers too that are different way. So it's interesting. They definitely are the 1,000-pound gorilla, and you can't compete.
But they aren't doing as much acquisition. They're more management contracts in terms of their acquisition strategy.
Well, they're still making acquisitions, but they'll go into it's my speculation that they would go into an acquisition and they would say, well, we'd love to buy your company, Jamie. However, we need to know we can renegotiate all the leases before doing so. And by the way, we want to turn those leases into management contracts.
Right.
If we can, and you work with us on that, we'll give you a premium.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they would do in an acquisition model, that would be the position I think would be well taken. On a management contract, management contracts are double-edged swords a lot of times. So, great, I don't have a lease, I don't have any liability. Yeah, you don't have as much upside either. Oh, and by the way, if you're not hitting your numbers, you can't fight your way through it. They just cancel your contract. So there's a lot of double-edged issues there. What you see more commonly, and everybody's calling them management contracts, but they're really performance leases. They look a lot more like a retail lease or a restaurant deal. And people are calling all of that with a label of management contract, but most of them are performance leases that IWG is doing.
Yeah, that's a common theme in conversations we're having, is just people's definitions of different things. And so sometimes we just have to level set. Now, question for you, back to
I love it when he makes these dramatic.
Godfather of the industry to some extent with Mark Dixon. Mark's been very interesting because he's not a very public-facing person, right? I mean, you look at Adam and what he did with WeWork, right? And how he was so bigger than life, big personality. What would you say are the things that have made Mark Dixon as successful as he has been within the sector?
Focus, an incredibly strong strength of will to stay at it, to stay at one thing, no matter what the market's doing, no matter what problems come up, no matter what the challenges are, to look straight ahead and say, I will fight that battle, and to just grind ahead without any wavering to the focus. I know Mark for years had a goal of 1 million workstations. Needed 1 million customers. And it was not uncommon to hear him or to hear others say of him, gosh, Mark must have a sign on his bathroom mirror. What did you do for me today? Because he comes down the hall at the office and he looks me straight in the face. He says, Gio, what'd you do today to get 1 million workstations? Jamie, what about that 1 million workstations? What did you do today? And that's an incredible strength. You don't have to, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but if you have the will and you stay at something year in and year out, you can overcome an awful lot of other deficits. And Mark definitely has that will. I think it's an incredible strength, honestly. I don't think I have it. I'm too much bounce around, what's the next shiny object? And he's just been very diligent at that, making it work.
Well, let's turn the question around. If we were to ask him what he thinks has made you successfully, what do you think he would say?
Oh gosh, I think you'd just say my good looks.
Your good looks and charm.
Well, I don't know about the charm or not. Most people think I'm fairly obnoxious, and Jamie will second that, by the way. But, I don't know. I think one of the characteristics of anyone who's been involved in an industry for a long time is that no matter what the industry is doing, no matter what the economy is doing, they stick at it. And there's a World War II general that was asked that same question. Why are you doing so well? Why are you doing so well? And it was George Patton, and he just said, I don't give a damn what the enemy's doing. I know what I want to do, and therefore I'll be there 3 days before the enemy. And I think that attitude of just knowing what you want to do. And if you look at us, we've changed business models 3 or 4 times. We keep progressing and adjusting our business model as we see opportunity in the future. We never, though, abandon the industry. We don't try to do something new necessarily so much as to take what we've learned and apply it to something new. And I think that's a characteristic that applies to our companies. Maybe it applies to IWG, and I'm sure it will applies to many others as well. But it's just, try and learn something every day and then apply it the next day.
You're a big sailor. I can see in your background. I noticed that the other day when we did our podcast. So I know that's a big hobby of yours.
Well, I have loved the ocean all my life, which is strange that I've moved to Texas. I do have a river in my backyard, though. So I to have the Trinity River flows through my backyard. But I've loved the ocean all my life and spent all of my life living on the ocean. And so sailing competitively and making that a big part of my lifestyle has just, it's part of who I am. Old sailor surfer, moved to Texas. My goodness.
Jamie, you got any last questions?
I'm going to steal a Geo question.
Oh,
What would your wife say is her favorite thing about you?
Boy, that's tough. It shouldn't be. Devotion, absolute loyalty, not just to her, but to anything that we agree on to take on together and anything that we each do individually. If we take something on, we stick at it, we're devoted to it. My wife and I have been together since 1969. So that shows a couple of things. First, I'm a very good compromiser and negotiator. And second, I absolutely am devoted to that relationship. Nothing is more important to me in my life than that relationship.
I love it.
that's awesome.
Wait, and I have one more thing. So you've talked about sort of the evolution of your businesses. You have a couple of different businesses. You've been doing this for a long time. What keeps you excited? What keeps you, you could stop. I would guess you could wake up one day and be like, I'm just going to sail. Yeah. What keeps you kind of getting out of bed devoted to this industry?
I think it's the people. It's my own team, number one. I'm devoted to them and want to grow things and try to help them grow things overall. I think there's an interest there, but this is vainglorious of me to say, but do you think Mick Jagger would ever retire?
Yeah,
No, I've made enough music and danced enough.
yeah.
You think Picasso ever said, I'm gonna sit on the beach and
I'm
not
painted out. I'm all painted out. Yeah.
or
Or
I'm
I'm
not
all
gonna paint, I'm
sculptured
not
out.
gonna
Yeah.
paint anymore. I strongly believe that all of us have an obligation through all of our living days to be productive to ourselves so that we're not a burden to others. And if once we've accomplished that, we should be helpful and productive on behalf of others. And I don't think that should ever stop. So changing what you do, yes. Stopping doing things to go play golf because you have enough money to do so, to me, that's criminal. You should devote yourself to charities. You should devote yourself to good works. You should help others in some way. And so I don't believe I'll ever retire. I don't have an ambition to retire. I may do different things, and I may do it with charitable organizations. As you know, we have the All Good Work Foundation we created. So we believe strongly in that type of activity. I believe that in that type of activity for myself.
Frank, I could
And
ask
so
you.
you just tapped on that. What is the All
Oh,
Work
yeah, we
Foundation?
should. Yes,
Sorry.
let's wrap with that one. I was just thinking, I can't believe we didn't cover that one. And you've been working on that for a while. I'd love to hear.
At the same time that we started All Work.space, to rising tide floats all ships. Let's create a publication. And as you mentioned, we had over a billion impressions, about 1.2 billion impressions just in social media in 2023. So we're getting the message out. We also felt that we could help the industry by creating a foundation that would draw attention to the good use of space and other ways that space could be used to not just make money, but to help others. And Nate Heasley, who manages the All Good Workspace
He
Foundation,
still does. I was, yeah, wondering if that was the case.
sort of a
Right.
fixture. And right now, he just recently put together a 2-facility joint venture with JLL. They've created 2 facilities in the New York environment to help charitable organizations. We have probably 15 or 20 locations that are helping 70, 80 different charitable organizations. And we're focused kind of on what I call old-fashioned church charities. We're focused on healing, feeding, and housing, things that people have to have in order to survive, as opposed to politically based nonprofit work or things of that sort, but sort of old-fashioned stuff. Really dig down and try and help people where you can. It hasn't gone as fast as I'd like to see it, honestly, but it continues to grow, one step at a time. And if we stick at it, we will ultimately achieve the objectives of helping as many people as possible.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Yeah. Frank, we could talk all day and tap your deep well of wisdom. So we might have to have you on again, but thank you for spending the time today. And Gio was recently on your podcast. So we'll put the links to your publications, newsletter, podcast in the show notes and make sure people can access those easily. And thank you for all that you do. And I assume, will we see you in Salt Lake in April?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
No, I'm really grateful for the chance to participate in your podcast and anything I can do to help in any way, anybody, just let me know.
Thank you, Frank.